Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for listening to the 303rd ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording from the MSP studio in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. I'm one of your hosts, Cameron Albert, alongside my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle DeVries. How you doing today, Kyle?
Doing great, Cameron. I've been watching a TV show.
Yeah?
I don't watch a lot of TV, honestly.
You've been watching Game of Thrones?
Yes. Well, the House of Dragon.
Yeah.
It's like a prequel kind of that they made afterwards. So, you know, they're doing some weird, confusing Star Wars stuff.
Okay.
Whatever. I don't watch a lot of TV. This show is gripping me.
Yeah?
It's making me feel things.
Okay.
I'm sure there's some of you out there who have watched it. It's like 4 episodes into the new season.
Yeah.
And it's making me feel things, man.
Good. I'm happy for you.
I wish, I don't think you're not a big show watcher either, are you?
No.
Just don't have time for it.
No. I purposefully don't make time for it. I've been thinking about maybe watching The Boys. I've watched The Boys up to this season, and now it's like internal battle. Do I start the next episode or not?
It's one of the most insane shows I think it's ever existed, The Boys.
True. With the House of the Dragon, is there any, is it a bummer at all that since it's a prequel, you know what's going to happen to certain people, or is it not related enough for it to matter?
It is related, but I think it's so far in the future that it's not. If you watch Game of Thrones, you would not necessarily know what happens in House of Dragon, but
I see.
A lot of people do know what happens. I'm not one of those people.
Oh, okay.
I've seen Game of Thrones. I enjoyed it. I haven't read the books, or I'm not like a super fan or anything like that. So I actually don't really know what happens in House of Dragons, other than broadly, it doesn't end well for really anybody.
I see.
But that's kind of common knowledge.
Yeah.
But so I'm sure there's comment down below if you're watching it, and
or what other shows are you watching?
Whatever else you're watching.
Producer Cameron, you had an eventful day. You went to tennis class.
Yeah, I did do that.
How was that?
It was fine. I don't need to dog on the lady, but she knew what she was talking about.
The teacher?
Yeah. She knows tennis.
Yes.
I would not say she's a great teacher.
Okay.
So it was fine. It was fun to hit the ball around and get some exercise, I guess. So.
You played tennis in high school.
I did.
Competitively.
I did.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those things like riding a bike a little bit. I'm going to have just a killer forehand the rest of my life.
Love that.
But that's basically it. I probably couldn't serve very well anymore. Can't run around very well anymore, I can tell you that.
I've played tennis just a handful of times, never in a competitive setting. But I love just conceptually, these classes being available just through the park board and stuff.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few.
I
haven't browsed a ton, but because I was specifically looking for tennis when I was looking at it. But there's quite a few things that they offer that are just random stuff I didn't know.
Shout out to Springfield Park Board.
Yeah.
Well, that's just a quick update on how we're doing. What are we going to talk about on the episode today, Kyle? We're going to talk about these college football 25 player ratings that were released. We're going to talk about the huge week of recruiting that Coach Drink and company had. Before we get into all that, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, leave us a review wherever you listen to us, and you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Missouri Sports Pod. And actually, Kyle, one more thing before we get into all of that. Did you see the news about Mike Gundy the last couple days? Maybe just yesterday and today?
Yeah. Yeah, I saw the video.
Kind of an insane little situation there. If you don't know, I've got a nice little article here from CBS Sports. Just Mike Gundy doing Mike Gundy things. It was 2007 when he did the I'm a man, I'm 40 thing.
It's one of the classic moments.
All-timer.
Of college football.
But also just that was 2007.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah. Also, he's been at Oklahoma State that entire time, which is wild and impressive. He's the king of Stillwater, Oklahoma, I guess. Anyway, star running back Ollie Gordon arrested on or pulled over something on suspicion of DUI.
Was that recent?
It was in June, I think.
Okay.
And
star player as in one of the best players in college football.
Yes.
Which I think probably has some relevance to
Yes,
what happened.
Exactly. Barely over the legal limit. We're not going to get into all that, but Coach Gundy decided he would get into it. And he was asked about the situation at Big 12 Media Days. And he said being over the legal limit, the way Ollie Gordon was the equivalent of 2 or 3 beers. And Gundy said that he easily could have been guilty of that 1,000 times in his life and just got lucky that it didn't turn into a serious situation.
Well, Mike Gundy, thought leader, famously a thought leader.
Yes.
On drunk driving.
Yes.
So we're so thankful that he weighed in here. It's like I should be surprised if it was anybody else. I'd be surprised like that they said that. I can't believe, I can't believe somebody would say that. But It's Mike Gundy. He's gonna say whatever he wants.
Yeah.
He always has, and nothing will happen.
No,
other than people will be like, "That's weird."
Yeah.
And probably an inappropriate thing to say. But
now he did decide to clarify his statement there later. He said, "My intended point today at Big 12 Media Days was that we are all guilty of making bad decisions. It was not a reference to something specific."
Which he's had like at least one DUI, right? Or like multiple, maybe.
Sounds like of the 1,000. So he's trying to say that 1,000 times he made a bad decision generally and didn't get caught, I guess is what he's trying to clarify here. Not 1,000 times he drove a car after drinking a few beers.
What's that Monsters Inc. quote? Something 1,000 times before I let this company die.
Yes, I saw that getting memed. Like, I'll drive drunk 1,000 times before I let this program die, before I suspend my star running back. He's not going to get suspended. He's not going to get punished. Actually, Coach Gundy said this is not a joke. It sounds like I'm making a joke here. Coach Gundy said his only punishment would be perhaps carrying the ball 50 times in week 1. And then I saw somebody on Twitter make a joke out of that and say, 4th string running back trying to figure out how to get more carries. And they were like taking notes. Like,
there you go.
Okay, just get a DUI. And
just barely, though.
Just barely
Don't
get a
overdo
DUI. And also, Ollie Gordon underage, not 21 yet. So,
love that.
So just get a DUI when you're underage. Boom. 50 carries just served up to you. I also saw, just to throw some nuance into the situation, I also saw people saying this is what Coach Gundy does when a player is involved in something or is taking some heat from the media or whatever. Coach Gundy makes it about him and gets all the attention on himself and protects the player in that way. And I thought that's actually a decent point, potentially. Yeah. I mean, again, going back to I'm a man, I'm 40, just...
Come at me.
Go crazy and make the story about you, and everybody will forget about whatever was going on with the player.
Brilliant.
It's a good strategy, I guess. You show you got your players back. But yeah, so speaking of Ollie Gordon, one of the best players in the country, he is, I think, the number 3 rated player, 3rd highest rated player, actually tied for 1st. At 96 overall in the new College Football 25 video game. Obviously, we're excited about the release of this video game, and
it's coming up
very soon. I think this time next week I will have played it, and anybody else who signed up for early access. Just like an absolute rube, but just one and done.
I've already given my wife a disclaimer.
Yeah, that
this is happening.
Yes.
So.
Oh, yeah. I've literally arranged for childcare for the release of this video game. So, yeah, Ollie Gordon, 96 overall, tied for highest overall rating of any player in the game. So, of course, Mizzou fans excited to see where Luther Burden stacks up. He is outside the top 10 at number 11, 94 overall. I was looking back at our predictions. We did a predictions episode on where Missouri players would be ranked. I said 96. You said 97. We thought he should be at least tied for the highest rated player in the game. I stand by that. Mm-hmm. I think that's completely justified.
Yeah, they were a little harsher on the overall ratings. Like 96 was the highest anybody got in the whole game. So
yeah.
I don't.
And we speculated a little bit on that maybe there would be just one 99 or maybe 0.
Yeah, we were slightly off on the economy, but
yeah.
Do you think that's one of those things like they're going to give themselves room like for during the season they can like reward the 99 like they kind of do in Madden sometimes?
Yes. Make a promotional thing out of it. Yes.
Well, they better get to it with Luther Burden. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Talk to us in October. We'll see where we stand.
We'll see. Yeah. Also interesting that the top-rated quarterback is, I believe, Shedeur Sanders, and he's like, I don't know, maybe top 20 range. So that's kind of an interesting thing, just for the game of college football in general. That like there isn't at least as of now that we know of, there's not like a dominant quarterback in the game, which. That's the most important position of football, first of all. Normally, that's like the first indicator of like a team that's going to be dominant is a dominant quarterback. That, like I said, as far as we know, that player doesn't exist.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see what like Caleb Williams would have been rated a year ago. That would have been like the best shot at a 99 or 98. Yeah, there were like,
I feel like 3 or 4 quarterbacks that could have been like 95 plus probably last year. Yeah. And that's a totally different landscape.
I saw, of course, there's all kinds of articles and stuff coming out, just any kind of content that you can make out of this video game release, which I'm all for. And one thing that I've seen is like players that it would have been fun to play as that we didn't get to over the years.
In the last decade, basically, of lost time.
And the one that stood out to me was Lamar Jackson and how just that he would have been unbeatable in the video game. But he's in Madden. I don't know how that works exactly.
I immediately thought of Johnny Manziel, but he's actually in the last game, right?
14,
yeah. Like Texas A&M is always really good in that game.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's always a Heisman favorite. And like Rock'em Nation did a like top 10 Mizzou players that it would have been fun to play as. So check that out. They had Kelly Bryant rated pretty high, which I agree, like didn't necessarily translate in real life, but if you're looking at preseason expectations for him, that's an excellent choice for a player that would have been fun to play with in the video game. Luther Burden, though, comes in at number 11, 94 overall, number 6 in the SEC, only Mizzou player in the top 100, and that's all that's been released so far is the top 100 players. That only goes to an overall rating of 90, and like 77 to 100 were all 90 overall. So there's 30 players there that are a 90 overall, which means we were wrong about our Caden Green prediction. I said 90, you said 92, and we were wrong about Brady Cook. I said 92, you said 90. So we'll see if any other players are close. I feel like Brady Cook's got to be on the
like
cusp.
Upper 80s.
Yes, got to be right outside that top 100. Luther Burden's second highest wide receiver behind Colorado's Travis Hunter. Now, a little bit of a unique situation there because I'm sure the video game, he's on the cover of the game, all that stuff. Colorado hype machine, even though they only won 4 games last year, is full steam ahead this preseason. But he's got to be able to play both ways in the video game. That's part of why he's on the cover. That's part of why he's so hyped. And that's just a unique thing to be able to do in the video game, is have a player play both ways. So there's some stats that probably got juiced a little bit just to make that workable. So he's, let me look. I think he's 95 overall, so just 1 point higher. I don't know. As a Mizzou fan, Luther Burden should be the highest rated wide receiver, but this is a unique situation with him needing to play defensive back as well. Luther Burden, 94 speed, 95 acceleration, 77 strength, which was one of the highest of the wide receivers in the top 100. 95 awareness, 92 jumping is all. That's all they've given us to go off of so far. And so
it's got to be kind of fun to have the job of just like watching film on like a million players and like that'll be like a 76.
Yeah, I
just watching for like every possible little like, oh, there was a nice jump.
I've always wondered like what all goes into that. How much of it's like automated based on recruiting rankings and stats versus actually watching some game film.
Yeah.
I was looking at just like SEC players of note. Let me pull that up real quick. So, Georgia has 2 guys in the top 10, free safety Malachi Starks and right guard Tate Ratledge. Right guard feels
Never
like
heard
a
of
weird
him.
position to like be 95 overall, but whatever. Carson Beck, 93 overall. I think he's the second highest rated quarterback in the game.
It's a weak class, man. It's a very strange quarterback class.
Quinn Ewers, 92 overall. There's maybe 5 or 6 Alabama players in the top 100, including Jalen Milroe, 90 overall. Arkansas player made the top 100. Landon Jackson, defensive end, 91 overall. We'll have to see how he does against Missouri's offensive line late in the season. Jackson Dart, Ole Miss quarterback, 90 overall. See, I feel like Brady Cook's right there with him.
Yeah.
Got to be just a point separating them. And one that I kind of thought was funny, I guess. You remember Oscar Delp?
Oh, yeah.
Oscar
The Georgia
Delp.
tight end?
Yes, Oscar Delp checking in at 90 overall.
No way.
Yes, he was the 99th player on the list.
I'm sorry. That's some baloney right there.
Watch out for Oscar Delp this
I will
year.
say that we were making fun of him, and then he might have like sealed the game
Yes.
against us with like a huge touchdown or something.
Yep, we didn't respect our opponent there.
Yeah.
But like Luther Burden, only top 100 player for Mizzou. Little disappointing, but maybe we've got some guys right there on the cusp. He's likely to be gone next year. If we're thinking about next year's video game, is there anybody on the current roster that you could see being a top 100 player next year? Or do you think it's more likely that maybe we land a big transfer next offseason that is like a top 100 player?
That's a great question. Off the top of my head, and again, it's like kind of tough maybe to judge like offensive line play, but
Right.
I think we've got 2 guys on the offensive line who I think could be top 100 players in college football next year, and that's Armand Mimbu and Caden Green. So that's probably would be my prediction for like next year. And honestly, like I think Mimbu could even go to the NFL after the season, potentially. So that would probably be my guess. As far as like skill players go, like
We're losing a lot of guys.
we're losing a lot of guys, and yeah, I think it'll just be probably a lot of different guys making plays rather than like a star player would be my guess, at least as of this point, like this far out. So yeah, I don't know if we have any offensive players that might be in the top 100 next year.
I kind of agree with you. I feel like Caden Green, as far as this, just next year, he's probably got the best shot.
Yeah.
I mean, if Toriano Pride is incredible, then he could make the jump.
Yeah, I wonder how many cornerbacks are like in the top 100. Again, that's kind of like a weird position to like analyze for something like this.
Yeah.
But he might be close though.
Yeah, Michigan cornerback Will Johnson, number 1 player, 96 overall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. There's some safeties and stuff in the top 10. Ohio State has like 8 players in the top 100, I think. Kind of crazy.
Better not be Will Howard.
No, I don't think Will Howard made the list. Brady Cook better be rated higher than Will Howard.
He should be.
Yeah. I was also thinking about anybody that's on the roster now that maybe not next year, but in the future would be in this like Luther Burden top 10 range. And I was thinking Brett Norfleet couple years from now.
Yeah.
He could be.
Winneri maybe.
Yeah, Winneri for sure is on that trajectory.
Yeah.
If Oscar Delp made the top 100, I think
Norfleet could do it. Yeah. Absolutely.
I had Caden Green on there as well, and Dalen Carnell maybe.
Yeah. Is this his last season?
No,
Or has he got 2 more?
I think he could go pro after the season potentially
with all the eligibility stuff, but
yeah,
he's played for 3 years now, I think. So maybe he still has 2 years left.
But I feel like Winneri and Brett Norfleet probably the best shot.
Yeah, those are good answers.
They put out some gameplay footage, a lot more than we had seen so far. Looks like it's going to be fun to play.
Yeah.
Of course, it was always going to be somewhat fun.
Like no matter what.
Yeah. But seeing Faroe Field,
it does feel like they really listened to what the fans wanted, and they put a lot of effort in.
They had some of the like amateur developers that did that college football revamped, like the mods for NCAA 14. Mm-hmm. They hired some of them to like actually be on the official development team.
Cool.
So that was like early on, that was like a good sign from for the fan base that they had the right people involved. But yeah, it definitely looks different enough from Madden that I'm like feeling confident. And I don't know, the passing mechanics with just like a little bit more fine tuning of touch passes and directing the ball, it all looked pretty good. If we're looking at players that might be in that top 100, I think Missouri signed a couple commits that might be in that top 100 in a few years.
Yeah, honestly, that might be your best guess at some future stars might be the recruits coming in.
Sheesh. This class
is wild.
They are cleaning up on the recruiting trail.
I mean, there's nothing to even say at this point. Like, we could say the best Missouri recruiting has ever been. That's how it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And we're like destroying those classes as far as like recruiting rankings go and
number of 4 stars,
general talent. It's just, I mean, every year we are just like breaking new records and setting new precedents for ourselves. This is fun.
Yeah. So let's start with today's news. Just today, East St. Louis defensive back Charles Bass committed to Mizzou. 4-star, according to Rivals, number 97 nationally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've kind of had to win a regional recruiting battle against Arkansas and Illinois and some of those teams. And, I think Missouri felt pretty confident all the way. Not to belittle, though, like his talent level. I mean, he's a top 100 player in the country. He's a very versatile secondary player. Like, I think they're not even 100% sure like where he's going to play exactly in the secondary. I think there's a good chance he could play kind of like the star role that like Dalen Carnell plays, as kind of like a little bit of a hybrid safety linebacker role. So typically I would think that that player is a little bit like thicker, a little bit bigger than like a traditional safety maybe, or like a bigger than a cornerback, obviously. So, he's got a lot of versatility. He's just a really athletic, well-rounded player.
Yeah, and just like keeping the East St. Louis pipeline open is pretty crucial.
Yes.
And, I mean, we've seen Missouri take some guys from East St. Louis that haven't panned out. And, like, off the top of my head, I can only think of Miles McVay, who was, like, one you want to get that went elsewhere. He's still at Alabama, right?
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, that was a name of a guy that maybe a long shot that we thought might want to transfer back home.
That's right.
Earlier in the offseason, but didn't transfer.
Still time.
Yeah, we'll get him someday.
So got Charles Bass, another 4-star recruit. On Sunday, they landed 3-star offensive lineman Keaton Jones. We talked about him. We talked about all these guys last week as potential commits.
Yeah.
He's listed as 6'5", 300 pounds. Adding to an all, like, we already had Jack Lange committed. I'll run you through the entire offensive line class in a little bit, but it's so crazy that just like, oh, ho-hum 3-star offensive, like 6'5", 300 pounds.
Yeah, with the size to potentially like play early if he wanted to.
From Kansas.
Yeah.
Just
if he wanted to, of course he wants to. If the
sign
staff needed him to play is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Also, one other note on Bass I forgot to say was I think he's going to be a spring enrollee. So those guys always like seem like they hit the ground running. They've got a chance to play early.
Yeah.
And probably an area that we could use the help early potentially. We're going to have probably some quite a bit of turnover in the secondary like over the next season. So that'll be good. But yeah, Keaton Jones, man, it's like it's like whenever we get a skill player, that's exciting. But getting the guys in the trenches, those are the guys you need to win consistently at the SEC level.
Yes. And he's not the only offensive lineman we got this week or over the weekend. On Saturday, the bigger splash was made when 4-star offensive lineman from Texas, Lamont Rogers, committed to Mizzou. His final four was like Mizzou, Texas, Oklahoma, A&M, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, rankings-wise, like, this is probably a top 5, top 10 recruit that we've landed in the last 5 or more years. Like, I mean, going back, 5 or 10 years, this would have been one of the biggest recruits. Like, we would have been talking about this dude for months, and he just quietly commits to Mizzou.
Yep.
This past week, like, okay, got another guy, cool. This would have been the crown jewel of really any recruiting class we've had, maybe ever.
Outside of like 3 specific guys.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. He's the number 74 player in the country according to Rivals, 60th according to On3. Yeah. 103rd according to 24/7. So top 100 player on all
Consensus.
3 recruiting services. Consensus 4-star.
What? How big is this man?
Well, it depends on where you look. He's listed at 6'8", 305 on Rivals.
6'8".
Yeah, he's listed at 6'6" and a half, 311 on 24/7. So we're just gonna go with 6'8", 311.
Yeah, that sounds good. Just the best of both worlds.
Yeah, it's always interesting, especially with offensive linemen, like what their year one official roster height and weight are compared to their recruiting profile.
Have like high school juniors always been this big, or is
I don't think so.
My goodness,
but maybe they've always been out there, but we just haven't seen them come to Mizzou. Is the thing?
That's probably it.
Alabama and Georgia are always gobbling up these 6'6", 300-pound
man-child
high schoolers. It is unreal. Yeah, so 2 offensive linemen. Then going back a little bit further to Thursday and Friday, Mizzou got back-to-back commits from 4-star wide receivers, Jayvan Boggs, Donovan. I heard him say his own name on a recruiting video, and he said it really fast, and it was like Olugbode. So who knows? Olugbode.
It's a
Olugbode.
It's a little bit of a tough one.
Donovan Olugbode and Jayvan Boggs, 2 of 4-star wide receivers. This, like, again, like in any other class, again, these would be the crown jewels. We've got like 6 crown jewels of this recruiting class.
Yeah, seriously. Okay, Donovan Olugbode. We talked about him last week. Mm-hmm. IMG Academy, which is one of the most talented, it's like a prep school, I guess, or like where they basically get to recruit.
Yeah.
One of the most talented high school teams in the country. They could compete with anybody. He was one of their best players. He was basically a top 50 recruit on consensus. Was watching a little bit of his film. He is just kind of an athletic freak. He's not, which it's interesting because I think he is pretty different type of receiver from Boggs. I'll talk about Boggs in a second, but more athletic than Boggs, but just he'll go up and make some crazy one-handed catch, like crazy catch radius, just like long arms,
big hands.
So he's just kind of a plus athlete, and I think they can probably refine his route running and stuff, and just insanely high ceiling as a player. Yeah. And
I got the feeling from watching him, I don't know. I feel like he looked more polished. Again, they're talking about the size of high school juniors with offensive linemen.
Yeah, he's big. Yeah,
and he just looks like he's probably has been doing this his whole life. But for a 17-year-old or whatever, he looks so polished.
Yeah,
and just so his instincts.
Smooth. Yeah.
Yes. Every route that he was running that I was watching, he was looking for the ball way before the ball got to him.
Yeah.
And obviously, you don't know who's throwing him the ball in some of these 7-on-7 camps and stuff, but every single time he's getting his head around, showing his hands, and then it's a beat, and then the ball is getting there.
Yeah.
And you can just imagine him with a college quarterback who knows the playbook and is ready to go.
Yeah, hits him in stride.
That ball's there as soon as he turns and looks for it. Oof.
Yeah, I think I'm really impressed by I mentioned his catch radius and just like probably his jump ball ability and stuff. Like I think he could very much be a high touchdown kind of player where, he's kind of a dominant go-to in the red zone, and just kind of throw it up and see what happens kind of player. I definitely think he could be that.
Did you see any of the videos where he's just doing backflips?
No.
Randomly. I saw a video from one camp where like 3 or 4 different times he'd just like make a catch and then him and this other guy would just do a backflip.
Really?
Yeah. So
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, add to the athleticism point there.
Yeah. Yeah, just insane body control, just knows where he is on the field, just all that stuff was elite.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think I mentioned this last week, it's refreshing whenever you're like, oh, I'd like to watch some highlights of this player. And there's like 30 minutes of highlight, like very like clear and good quality video of this player playing football. And so I was enjoying watching that earlier.
I went in and I was looking at like the top wide receivers of the 2025 class, and I was watching just trying to compare a little bit, like what does tape look like of these different guys?
Yeah.
And the top wide receiver in the class that's committed to Oregon, it's interesting because their tape looked so similar, but you could clearly see this kid that's going to Oregon, his just like top end speed is just off the charts.
Yeah, I feel like that's the type of player that Oregon, they always recruit those type of players. Yeah, just like high end speed.
Yes. And so
just figure out the details later.
Yeah, like the catch radius and like the crispness of the routes and the smoothness of all that was pretty comparable from what I was seeing. But then this guy just had another gear that he could switch into.
Huh.
So I feel like Missouri, I mean like Luther Burden level of like everything's there, like no weak points really.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just kind of crazy. I was trying to get a feel for like, what's the number 1 wide receiver compared to the number 10 wide receiver?
Mm-hmm. Was he as big as Olugbode?
No, a little more slender. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Olugbode's size. Like he's he's gonna bully some people.
He looks like, I don't know, he just already looks like a college wide receiver.
Yeah, he does. Okay, let's talk about Jayvan Boggs, who, like I said, is like a totally different type of receiver, and I love that they kind of contrast in the way that they do. But Boggs, 67th overall on Rivals. He's from Florida, and so he was down to Missouri and UCF. UCF kind of being a local school. He had some other like bigger schools in the mix too, and was also previously committed to Ohio State. Decommitted from them, and so Boggs, I think to me is much more of like a tactician, like a great route runner, great hands. Like I think that's kind of like a lost art a little bit, and like the modern game is like guys just catching with their hands, and there's a lot of like body catching. I mean, honestly, if you could make one, you know where I'm going with this?
Yes, I do.
If you could make one critique about Luther Burden, it's probably that.
Yeah.
He's kind of a body catcher. Like he'll kind of wait for the ball to come into the bread basket, and instead of like going up and getting it with his hands. And I feel like Jayvan Boggs does that at like an elite level where he just is like, I don't know, the ball hits him in the hands. The ball is like out in front of his body when
he's
he catches
going and getting it. Yeah.
And so he's not using his body to cradle the ball at all. I think that will help him. Like he's just the perfect like third down guy who's going to make tough contested catches, and he's explosive too, but very much more just like route runner, tactician type of player than Olugbode is. So I liked watching his film too.
Yeah, and obviously it's like feels silly to say like, wait, the wide receivers like being good at literally catching the ball.
It does seem
but
silly.
Also, like thinking back to just this past season for Mizzou football, how consistent and how it was just like not really a question. If Cook got it close to the guys, they were coming down with it. There was the one against LSU where they went back to back to Theo Weiss, and the second one was a touchdown where he dropped the first one. That was like the only one I can remember from the entire season. And especially Mookie Cooper, just insanely clutch, like third down catches. Mekhi Miller just catching everything. Like, it's always incredible to me when they have so few opportunities, but make them count.
Yeah.
And Marquise Johnson, same thing. Like, just, I don't know. It's just like a weird feeling to just have so much confidence in the wide receivers.
Yeah.
And seeing how they're recruiting wide receivers in the 2024 class and now the 2025 class, it just feels like we're going to be on this trajectory for a while.
Yeah, I remember in the past you could not say that about Missouri's wide receivers,
right,
where it's like they got to be wide open to catch it, and they're not going to make contested catches. They're not going to go up and get it. I remember even just like sometimes watching college football or Mizzou on a Saturday, and then the next day watching NFL, and there's always going to be a difference there. Like NFL guys are always going to blow them away as far as like talent goes and stuff, but I remember that difference just felt so drastic in those not so great years, 8 or 10 years ago or whatever, where it's like, oh, these guys catch the ball.
Yeah. Well,
when it's not a good pass sometimes or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And even like decent Mizzou teams, we're talking about like good players. Like I feel like the names that are going to jump out to every Mizzou fan are Jonathan Johnson.
Yeah, like Emmanuel Hall.
And Jamon Moore.
Yeah.
Who it was like, these guys are super solid and make big plays, but they just drop some balls.
Yeah.
And that's just part of it.
Yeah, they still weren't elite at just catching the ball.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think, and that's even still, I think you can be a highly rated recruit and still not have that ability.
Yeah.
Like I feel like Boggs does. That was the first thing that I noticed about Boggs was like he is just an elite pass catcher.
Yeah. Yeah. 2 4-star wide receivers who are top 100 in the country. This recruiting class now, the overall class ranked 13th on On3. They've got Zollers as a 5-star, number 11 player in the country, and 9 4-stars. 13th on 24/7 Sports with 5 4-stars. 11th on Rivals, again with 9 4-star players. I was looking back at previous seasons, like the 2022 class, which featured Luther Burden, was 13th on Rivals, 18th on On3 and 24/7. So we've surpassed that now. 2021 was 19th on Rivals. Everything else is in the 30s. 2024 was 21st ranked class. And I was going back to pre-Eli Drinkwitz days. The 2015 class, if you remember that one, it was notable for Mizzou. Featured Drew Lock and Terry Beckner Jr. That was ranked 24th on On3, was the best rating on any of the services for the 2015 class. So we're really in uncharted territory, have been for a while, and it just doesn't look like there's any slowing down. No. I mean, and the way they're going about it with getting 4-star guys out of state, Coach Peeler is creating a pipeline. He's like creating a one-man pipeline from the state of Florida. I don't even know what his connection is there, but he's opened up the state of Florida for Mizzou recruiting in a new way, dipping back into Texas like old Big 12 days. And I was looking at so now the offensive line recruits for the 2025 class: Lamont Rogers, 6'8", 305; Keaton Jones, 6'5", 300. Already had Henry Fanuku, 6'4", 295, and Jack Lange, 6'8", 275. You're missing a center, but that's an entire starting offensive line in a couple years.
Yeah. Yeah, to mix with the talent that we already have, too. Yeah. It's just, man, they're going to have...
And whatever they pull out of the transfer portal.
Yeah, and they've talked about kind of like best player available. Like, yes, maybe some of these guys specialize at like one position or something like that, especially like tackles. I feel like those offensive tackles are typically a pretty different body type than a guard or something like that. But for the most part, though, it's basically the best 5 players, and they're just making that difficult on themselves in a good way in the future, where it's just like, who do we even like? I mean, we've got so much talent. Like, who do we even put out here?
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with like specifically with Winery this upcoming season, because the staff has been so slow to bring young players into the starting lineup. They have to just like command snaps basically.
Yeah.
Because the staff is committed to bringing veterans in through the transfer portal and just rewarding guys who have a lot of experience that they can trust to execute.
Yeah. I think that, and obviously we have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, but I think that's something that probably happens in recruiting is promises are made and maybe it's like playing time as a freshman or you're going to be a starter by this time or whatever. And maybe that's happening and maybe promises are not kept no matter what team you're talking about. But I don't think that's happening with Missouri. Like they're getting freshmen and they're not playing if they're not ready to go. Or like they're bringing in transfers, they're bringing in competition, and the best players are playing. Yeah, and so it's interesting to think that.
From the outside, you just have to kind of think and hope, I guess, that the communication is solid there.
Right.
Where
it's
and so
how
far,
are they doing this? Yeah.
I think the next 2 seasons will show a lot. Obviously, like you have an 11-win season, and back that up with a top 15 recruiting class.
Yeah.
You have all this momentum. It's like you're just unbeatable.
Right.
Is like the general feeling behind the program, the stadium upgrades, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I, as a Mizzou fan, just like, okay, well, my mind goes to, okay, so how could it unravel?
Of course.
Like what could make this all crash?
Right. And we're at this point, like I feel like better about our competitive depth to where it's not like, well, there goes our really good offensive tackle. The season's over. Yeah. Like, now we're getting pressured 30% more than we, it's right. It actually feels like, well, if we lost some guys, like I think we'll be okay. We can weather the storm. So that makes me feel a little bit better than I would have a few years ago if we had a good season or something like that.
Well,
like
and
it doesn't feel like a fluke.
Yeah. And it's the 2021 recruiting class that it's like everybody's gone.
Almost completely gone. Yeah.
And
they just supplemented it with transfers and stuff.
Hasn't really mattered.
Yeah.
And so, that just, there's so much confidence, so much momentum around the program right now. It's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy just how much like 1 year can change things. Like even in a sport where things tend to be pretty slow moving, like it's just crazy how Coach Drinkwitz just looks like a genius. Mm-hmm. It's just like, now it just feels like every single move he's making, whether it's in the recruiting game, if it's something he says, looking back like 2 or 3 years ago at media days or something, you're like, this man had a freaking plan, and like it's coming together. Like it's just like you have a good season, it solves everything.
Yeah, it makes everything look better in retrospect.
Yeah,
and even little things that like a classic example of this, I feel like, is the celebration video from the Ennis Rakestraw commitment.
Yeah.
It was like he was literally getting clowned on for like freaking out about a 3-star.
Air quotes 3-star player.
Yes. And now, I mean, I just saw Rakestraw post pictures of him in a Detroit Lions uniform.
Yeah.
And
like, what was he, a 2nd-round pick in the NFL draft?
Yeah, it's like, that's all. That's all you need to say.
That was like that was his first recruiting class, right?
Yeah, I think so.
It was like he'd been the coach for like a couple months.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing.
Don't ever let him leave.
Don't let him leave.
What's he going to be? How is he going to be acting at SEC Media Days? Because I think you looked it up earlier. He'll be set to address the media
next Tuesday. I think it's the 16th of July. So probably by the next time we record, Missouri's Day at SEC Media Days will have already happened.
Yeah. Brady Cook will be there.
Brady Cook, Christian Williams, and Luther Burden, I think, are the 3 player representatives. So, yeah, man, it's crazy that it's already that time of year.
Yeah.
Like less than a week away, we're already talking about it's officially talking season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the season's going to be here before we know it, but yeah, man, I can't wait to see how Drinkwitz goes into the event and how he approaches it. I think he's been a different guy every time.
Yeah,
like. We talked about it a little bit last week, but like coming off on a slightly better season than we thought, he was like kind of cocky.
Yeah.
Like he was, I don't know, he was making jokes and like poking fun at people and stuff. And like wasn't that well received generally
right.
by like the league, and even by Mizzou fans were kind of like, all right. And then he kind of like maybe his second season wasn't as good, and he kind of was like, we better show some results on the field before we talk. And so I don't know. It's funny to see like how he's kind of gone through stages, and I genuinely have no idea how he's going to roll in this year.
I feel like I might say this no matter what the situation was, but I think I'm like too scared of him being too animated or too much, basically trying to do too much. But I don't know. I kind of just want to see him locked in and like all business.
Yeah.
But he works best when he's just being himself.
Yeah.
So
especially like up on the state. Remember last year whenever he like named every player on the team.
Well, it was like filibustering. He like trying to take up the entire time.
I legitimately think that was a thing. Like he's like, I don't really want to answer any questions, so I'm just gonna name every player on the team.
Yeah.
Hey, we got this guy, this guy's pretty good.
Yeah. That was bizarre.
Yeah. But whenever when it gets off the main stage and he goes and does a little side interviews with maybe Paul Feinbaum or whatever, I mean, he's just it's like he's just drinking beer out in the back porch or something.
They clearly like having him on.
Yeah.
And want to get him.
And they'll ask him stuff that he really shouldn't answer.
Yes.
Because there's a chance he might do it.
Exactly.
And sometimes he kind of does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So strap in for that, I guess. Ooh. I'm excited to see Luther Burden talk a little bit more.
Yeah.
I feel like
if anyone's going to be all business, I think it's going to be him.
Yeah.
He seems like a dude that's pretty locked in.
Yeah. I feel like I know how Brady Cook sounds. I know how he answers questions. I don't feel like I have that in my head for Luther. So
yeah.
So we have that to look forward to. Just an incredible week of recruiting. Video games coming out. It's good times.
Life is good.
Yes. No matter what's going on, Mizzou football, college football.
College football marches on.
Yes.
No matter what's going on in the world, we will have Mizzou football.
Exactly. No matter what's going on in our personal lives, no matter what's going on in the world, we have this for this time.
Exactly.
Cherish it. Hold on to it. And anything else?
That's it.
Anything else? Nope.
Okay. What do I need to do here? I need to say special thank you to our Patreon supporters. Britt Treese, Ryan Deemore, Tristan, Ben Smith, Parker Daddy JD, Tim Keynes, Tyler Harsel, Brandon Garofalo, Brandon Hanks, Matthew Taylor, Luis Hernandez, Joshua Jacobson. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. We love you, and you can find us on we have a podcast. You can find it.
We're there
on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We are on Twitter at Mizzou Sports Pod, and you can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
You can find our t-shirts and stickers on our online shop, MissouriSportsPod.BigCartel.com.
Thank you everyone for listening. We love you. We will see you next week after Media Day.